everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today is our webinar Wednesday to create the perfect interactive assembly instruction with SOLIDWORKS Composer and Visualize. My name is Scott Woods. I'm the product manager for Technical Communications Suite here at Hawk Ridge Systems. And today I'm going to go over how to basically take all those high-level features out of Composer and out of Visualize and use them to create step-by-step assembly instructions. So this is kind of a new concept when it comes to assembly instructions, but don't just pigeonhole it there, because this setup I'm going to show you today can be used for maintenance procedures, operations, any kind of manual that you're going to be putting together, more of like an online presence. The one I'll be showing today is assembly instructions, but it can be used for many different kinds of publications. So first off, the two programs I'm going to be covering, they're both SOLIDWORKS applications. It's SOLIDWORKS Composer, SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Both of these applications are not add-ons for SOLIDWORKS. They're actually separate applications. They install separately. You don't even have to have SOLIDWORKS installed or even own SOLIDWORKS to use either one of these. And they both work with SOLIDWORKS files, of course, but with many other different CAD formats. So don't think that you have to use these only with SOLIDWORKS. Basically, if it's in 3D, you can get it into either one of these applications and do a ton of stuff with them. So, and before we get started, two things I just want to call out here. Just what's new 2019. We've got Service Pack 0 out right now, waiting for Service Pack 1. And for Composer, the PMI data import we now have. These are just like the top of the list here. And then for Visualize, you can actually do 10 times faster rendering. So just a heads up, if you haven't checked out, if you haven't taken a look at 2019, it is available, and both of these programs had great enhancements this year. So I'm going to be covering quite a bit today. So I'll try to explain it as best as I can. I'll slow down compared to other presentations I've given, because this is a lot of data we're going to cover today, a lot of different steps. But really the concept is what I just really want to get out there. So, we break this down into three different programs, right? Because there's SOLIDWORKS CAD. Again, we don't need that here, but it does help, right? If you want to make changes and things like that. And then there's Composer, and then there's Visualize. So CAD is where you're going to develop all the 3D design. So without 3D models, these other two applications, you really can't use them. So it all starts in SOLIDWORKS. It starts with that 3D CAD, creating those 3D models, and various other CAD programs, of course. Now, in SOLIDWORKS, we can export. So natively, this is, if you have SOLIDWORKS, you can do this today. You can export as a 3D PDF. So all you have to do, and really all you have to do, is open up the model in SOLIDWORKS, do a save as PDF. There's a little checkbox to say, yes, save 3D PDF, and you can save a 3D PDF. We'll be showing that PDF and attaching that to our assembly instructions today. Now, if you have SOLIDWORKS model-based definitions, we can export that 3D PDF, but we can add stuff to it. You can put it into a template. You can have dimensions, annotations, things like that, and really spice it up. So that's for a different day, a different kind of story. But just keep in mind that the 3D PDF can have PMI data. It can have dimensions and annotations. The one today is just going to be a 3D model. Okay, then we get into Composer. And in Composer, this is where we do all of the step-by-step procedures. Composer is really good at that. That's what it's made for, to take the model and to break it down into individual steps. Now we're also going to take Composer to link to not only Composer files, but exterior files, animations, 3D PDFs. You can link to websites. You can link to SVG files, different publications. So we'll be showing that linking today. So that's a big one. Also, Composer can do animation. So you can publish out a 3D animation out of Composer, a video file, which we have. And then also this entire structure of this website is going to be used, it's going to be constructed using SVG files, which is a standard vectorized graphics file. So it's going to be the backbone of the project today. Now in Visualize, this is where you get the photorealism imagery, the VR content, animation, even 3D animation that's in photorealism. Now all of this stuff just spices up that assembly instruction and really takes question away from things. So because Composer is very technical, it's not photorealistic, and then Visualize is very photorealistic, but it's not technical. So you combine the two together, and you can create a really cool output. So let's do that. So first off, let's get into Composer. Just close this down here, shrink it down, and let's jump into Composer. So what I have here, first I want to cover what I've developed, and then we'll go through how. So let's do the what first. So first off, we have our cover image, right? So just a rendering, kind of a rendering out of, as far as Composer is concerned, this is a Composer rendering. This is kind of what you can expect to get out for your images. But then we get into more of the technical publication, something like this. Activate this slide here. And what I have going on is I have, just a basic balloons, has some BOM IDs on these components. I got my text here that says this is the assembly, here's the sub-assemblies. Now this guy right here, if you notice when I mouse over, it highlights. So if I select that, come down here in the properties, and keep in mind everything in Composer is based off properties. So we're going to be doing a lot of that today, editing these properties here. So if we go to properties, you see this link, and then we see that it's actually linking to a file. Where that file is actually on my computer here. It's in this folder, and it is this component right. So this is the step gripper explode. So right here. So this is an SVG file, and if I were to open that up by itself, this is what that SVG looks like. Just an exploded view, 2D drawing with some links in here. And I'll show how we actually create those links. So when I click on that, what's going to happen is it's going to open up that SVG file. Now the problem is, and this is where I think everybody gets stuck at the beginning of creating linking SVG files, is how do we link to something that doesn't exist yet? So we're putting together this document, right? And so I put together this cover page. We'll get to this guy later. I go and I take this gripper head here, and I explode it apart. I have my text and I have some buttons that navigate forward and backwards, and then this is the next step, right? So this, when we hit forward, so it's gonna go here, right? But we have these buttons to go forward and backwards for this assembly instruction, but we have nothing to link to, right? Because those files don't exist yet to link to them. So what you do, and there's a few rules to follow, but once you get it down, it's fairly simple. What I like to do is I like to create the full structure. Put the buttons in there, just don't link them to anything yet. And so I say, okay, here's the exploded view. By the way, I'll cover this in more detail here in a different assembly, but or a sub-assembly. But here are the parts we're going to assemble. Go to the next step. Those parts are assembled. These are the next parts we're going to assemble. Next step, and so forth until we get the assembly completed. Okay, now the critical part here is you want to name your views. If you don't name them, it makes linking later on, especially if you go home for the weekend and come back on Monday, it makes linking really difficult to do because you don't know what to link to, because everything is named the same thing. Because if you don't name these views, you export them, those files aren't going to have any intelligence to them, and it's going to be hard to find out what they are without opening them. So if I said, okay, this is top level gripper, here's the exploded view, here's step 1, step 2, step 3. By the way, you just double click. It's like a single click, wait, click again, just like any standard Windows file. Also, if you click and hit F2, then you can modify that. And you just type it in. So you just key it in what the name is. Once you have everything named and all your steps put together, now you want to save these all out as SVG files. And it's a two-step process. We save them out as SVG files, and then later on we'll be overriding those SVG files with new files. The only reason why we're saving out SVG files is so we have something to link to. So to do that, you go to your workshops, go to your tech illustration. In the tech illustration, and we have a few other videos that cover this in more detail, about line widths and how you actually want that to look. So you define how you want it to look here, and then if you want your cartridge lines, your shadows, colored regions. I'm going to say I also want colored regions, so we'll select that. And I'm going to do per actor 3-point. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now if I go to multiple, you'll see views. So you'll see that so if I activate that, you'll see it says file name. view name. So it's going to take my file name, which is main project, and it's going to take my view names, which is however I named them here, and it's going to export all these as SVG files named with that structure. So as long as I keep this project name the same, and as long as I keep these files named the same, then when I export, they would overwrite all the old ones. In this process, we don't really have to worry about that because we're going to be saving each one out individually once we actually modify them, but just as a heads up here. But all you have to do is say save as, link to, open up the folder you want to save into, hit save, and with that selected, it will save out every single one of these. At least it should. I have seen a little bug that's easy to fix. I noticed that when you first try to export a batch of SVGs, nothing happens. However, once you export one, just export one, then all of a sudden it like triggers Composer to enable the batch export. So if you're doing this for the first time, you say batch and nothing happens, just uncheck that, save one out, then check it, and then it works. So little bug I found and found an easy solution for it. Okay, so with that said, this is how all of these files were created here. So we see all of these SVGs. So I just basically set up the structure, saved up the SVGs, and now I have something to link to. So now when we go to, let's go to, for instance, this guy here. If I say go back, there's a button here. It's just a text block. Click on it. In the properties here, there is a link. And if I go to this link, you'll see that it's linking to the top level gripper. This guy here is called top level gripper. So if I hit those three dots and I say, well, what do I want to navigate to? When I navigate to the folder, I see the top level gripper. This is why this is important to name, or else it'd be hard to choose. It'd be hard to find what file I want to link to. But right here, I can look at the views. I can see that one step back is this guy. One step forward is this guy. Right now, I'm editing the go back for linking, and I can say that that is going to be top level gripper. So I click on that. I say OK. Now this is where things get a little bit not tricky, but just something to keep in mind. And this is one of those things we found out, and I just want to share it with you. It's a pretty good trick. So by default, you'll see that it's linking to that directory. I mean, it's file, C drive, there I am, my desktop, and it's SVG file. So now if I were to move that SVG file off my desktop, then all of a sudden this link would break, right? And this is by default, it's a direct link. Well, we want relative linking because later on, if I basically am creating a website into a folder, I'm going to send that to my web guy and say, hey, can you put this on the internet? He puts on the internet. Now the link's going to have, if it's our site, it's going to be like hawkridgesys.com. It's going to be like /techpubs or something like that, right? It's no longer going to be linking to my desktop. And if I don't modify this, whoever views that, the link is going to be broken because it's linking back to my personal desktop, which of course isn't public domain. So to fix that, you have to go into this field, and it's a little tedious, but you want to delete everything but the file name. So see, that's a pretty long file name I have here. So that backslash right before the file name, I'm just going to hit backspace and delete all of that. You can do like a selection, highlight it, delete it. But, by just doing the manual deleted, I don't know, I feel like I have a little bit more control over it to make sure that I'm deleting just what I need. So I've deleted everything but the file name. By the way, if you go into the file, copy the file name, come here and paste it, you can make that work as well, right? This is just a for sure way to get it. So I've deleted everything but the file name, and I hit enter. Now, enter is important. I've noticed that if you go on to something else, it might not actually take in the change that you just typed in. And also, if you hit enter, it looks for that file, and if it can't find it, it'll go back to the full file path. So hitting enter is a verification to make sure that it actually is finding that file in that folder. But it is a relative link. So right now, I have everything saved in the same folder, and as long as I move that whole folder together, then there's no problem. And then I just update this view when I'm done. I'll cover that again on the separate assembly. And then the same thing goes for going forward. So now I got step one, and you see in the link, that's just the file right there, step one. And how I did that is I linked to it and I went back in and I deleted the things, hit enter, and everything's good. And you just update the view. It's another critical part. And I even do this sometimes where I'm going through and I don't update my view after I make a big change like that. And you think everything is good. You can even save out the SVG and the SVG is good. And then I go into the next page. And then I later on come back here and that link is broken because I didn't update the view after I made my change. So another thing to watch out for there. Now, we've got through the assembly and let's actually get into building this thing. So, oh, you know what? Let me show the publication. I think that's important too. So I go back to my folder where everything's, and you see I have everything dumped in this folder. I have an animation, I have a PDF, I got this file, which it's a Visualize file. We'll get to that in a little bit. I have like this guy, which is just a JPEG, right? So if I want to link to the JPEG, it's in here. Now by putting everything in the same folder, those relative links all retain once we upload to the website. If there's any subdirectories, don't even worry about them because these guys are their data files that have been developed that automatically have been created from these other files. And when you do the relative linking, it opens up these files reference those files, everything works. As long as it's underneath that same umbrella. Okay, so I'm going to open up the top level gripper, and it's an SVG file. SVG files open up in, I'll just open it up here. Sorry, it's on a different monitor here, so let me just drag it over. They open up in your browser. So by default, an SVG is, by default, it will open up in your browser. That's because these files are made to go online. They're made to be accessed from multiple people, and that is really the purpose of them. So you can just put it out there in the world and have anybody, regardless if it's a cell phone, iPhone or a Android device or a PC or a Mac, it doesn't matter. Any device that's has a browser can view this, and that is the purpose of it. If it's on your computer, you can also edit it with things like Adobe Illustrator is a good one. So there's a lot of different uses for these files. They're just vector files. Now I look at this and I have a couple links here, and if I click on this link, that takes me to that first step. I say step 1, it goes to the next one, and you'll see it's navigating to the desktop, but the links actually aren't to my desktop. That just so happens to be where the file is currently residing. And since it's all in the same folder, once I upload that to the internet, then when I go here, it will say like your company.com / whatever directory it's in, file, done. So that is the way it will work. And we'll say, okay, here's the components we're going to assemble. Go to the next step, they're assembled. Now I'm going to assemble these components. They're assembled. There's the next step. Those are assembled. Here's my top level, or here's my sub-assembly that's ready to go. I go back, here's the top level assembly. Of course, I could take this one step further and do like a top level assembly installation as well. I can have those pieces go in. Now, the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to create this yellow piece right there. I'll create an assembly instruction of it on the fly. And also, let's show one last thing here. So if I hit this button, this is going to play an animation. So this is what I'm saying, that these are just links. And if anything's in this folder, you can link to it. You can put that on your website, and you could build this out and be as creative and cover as many different publications as you need. This is a video. This video was created in Composer, the same assembly, brought into Composer and animated. So Composer has a full animation timeline, and you can do animations such as this. It also, of course, does procedural animations for assembly and things like that. But yeah, so it's basically building a website. And we're going to have more buttons here. We're going to go through and add more content as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that down. Let's go back to Composer, and let's show how this is done. So first off, I pre-started this here. I got a view. Here's the sub-assembly, which is that guy right there. And you'll see that translate. Once I go here, you can see those components. Everything else they get isolated out, and I did some color coding. Only thing I did here is isolate those components, color code them, you select the component, right? You color code it here. Added some balloons. Build materials popped up from adding those balloons, and then I just edited the text here to point or to call out what these components are with the right BOM ID. Also, these buttons were just from the previous steps, and right now I think they are blank. Let's see. Yep, you see there's just nothing in there. So I need to add an event link to these components here. Now, of course, this file here doesn't exist yet. We need to save it out as an SVG. The file that goes forward doesn't exist yet, and the file that goes backwards does. So the go back actually is going to link back to the top level gripper. So to do that, again, we just go link, hit those three little dots. I go to the top level gripper, just make sure it pops in the field here. I'm going to say OK. And then I did a little highlight there, but I'm going to hit the delete button. There's final project, and there is the name of the file right there. Hit enter. See? So I hit enter, the name stayed, so it's able to find that, and we're good to go. Now I want to update that view, and you'll see I'll update the view after I modify anything, because that really just solidifies that, hey, I want to save that change out, just in case something happens, right? Okay, so with that, now I want to go to step one. One last thing, sorry. I want to create a link on the main page, the top level gripper, to this. So when somebody comes here and they click on this yellow image right here, I want to navigate to this guy here. But you'll see this one is view 17. So I need to name it. So let's go back and let's call this a name. And let's call it the servo. Let's call it servo. What did I call this? Servo assembly 1. We'll just call it servo number 1. Just something so we can reference it later. It doesn't really matter what that is, because we can always change it later, right? Or link to whatever we want. So we control the link, so it's not like that has to be named a certain name. All right, so top level gripper, come back here, got our yellow block. Now we want to link, and we want to point that to that guy there, which doesn't exist yet, right? So this is where I'm saying you got these gotchas. Like, I want to link to something, but it doesn't exist yet. So this is why there is a procedure that we put together to really follow to get this to work. So take this guy. Now I'm going to uncheck views. I'm going to do a save as. Now in this folder, I want to say server 1. Now the reason why I have to do this is because I didn't create all the steps at first, right? I created just that first top level assembly, that first subassembly, and I exported those as the batch export for all the SVG files. Now I'm adding an additional one, so that's why I have to save these ones out manually. If I would have done everything at the beginning, saved as SVGs, we'd be done. I wouldn't have to do this part. But, you know, world doesn't always work that way, and so we'll kind of flow with the punches here. So let's go back here. We got that guy there selected. Now hit the three little dots. Now when I come here, we have server 1. Server, I meant to write servo, but we'll use it. So there we go. So that's the SVG I'm linking to. So I'll say OK. And of course, I want to come in here and I want to delete everything but the name of the file. Something like that. Hit enter. And there we go. Okay, now I want to update this. So I'm going to update this view, and then I'm going to save this view back out. Because now this view is different than the one that I have saved offline, because I've made a change to it. So now I say save as, and because this is named top level gripper, I can find that here and hit save, and yes, replace it. And now let's go test it, so as soon as that's done. So right now we just created a linking pair in that website. Just like that. So saved out this guy as an SVG. I've modified this to point to the SVG, and I think I even made this go back to the previous file, which is that top level. Yep. So now when I go here and I say top level gripper, so now when I click on the yellow bar, it didn't find it. I'm not sure why, because that was maybe it moved or it got renamed. Let's see real quick. So I mean, it's right there. So let me test this one last time here. So let's say I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to save as. This happens when you do it live, right? But let's go ahead and save it out. So there we go. Let's replace it. Okay, and let's just test that here. Worst case, I might have to relink it, but let's see if we can get it without it relinking. I wonder if that, I think that little pound sign is conflicting here. So let me rename that real quick just to see if maybe that's what's going on. I kind of thought that when I typed it in, like, maybe it will be an issue, maybe not. It's kind of a little test there, but let's see if we can, let's see if that is the issue. So now if I rename this to take away the hashtag, and let's update the view. By the way, you can go in here and you can click this button right here for design mode, and we can test these links before we save them out. And it looks like, yeah, it looks like it is having issue with that link, and I'm not sure why, because it's right there. Let's save it. Sorry, I'll give this one last shot, and then we'll move on, because you know that's what happens when you go live here. All right, so I'll save that. It should link up, and it should work. I mean, I'm doing everything right, so you know, if you follow these procedures, even though if it doesn't work live here, it's going to work for you because this is the way you're supposed to do it. And I just got to figure out what's going on with mine. All right, so now I click that, and there we go. This isn't perfect here. I'm not sure what's going on there, but at least it linked up. So note to self, don't use hashtag in the naming structure. It messed it up. So for some reason, yeah, I'm sure there's an HTML reason behind that I just don't know about. Okay, so now if I go back, now I go back here, right? So go forward. Now I should have a step one, click on that. Let's do that real quick. I know we don't have a whole lot of time here, but I think it'd be good to go through those steps one last time before we move on to the next set here. So with that said, what I do is I take this view, and I say, okay, I need another step here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to hit this button to create a view. We got that. Now I need to modify the back button to go back to the server one, which is fine. We'll call it that. So now we want to say that this is the server one, and we're going to delete. We want to delete this text right here for everything but the file name. Just like that. Hit enter. So now that back button, instead of going back to the main assembly, it's going back to this one here, and I'll just update that. And then I want to say, hey, I want to click here to go to step 2, which doesn't exist yet, but let's go ahead and rename the button to say step 2. And let's go ahead and update that. Now that I have this is step 1, and this is going to go to step 2. Now that I have a step 1, let's go ahead and call this, and I'll just call it servo step 1. Just like that. That way when I save it out as an SVG, I'll know what it's called, and I'll be able to link this one back here. Now you see I'm doing these one at a time. That isn't really ideal. It takes a lot of time. It's good to set up all the views, go back and add your links all at the same time, and then just export them. Just showing it one at a time, just to show the steps here. Okay, so we can go back. We've gone back there. Step 2 is going to go to the next step, which doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and just update that. And really is that easy. So once everything is set up like the template, you'll see how easy it is to create these steps. I mean, I can create this in just a minute or two. Now I go back here, and I say, okay, well, when I click this button, I want it to go to servo step 1. So now I hit the 3 little dots. We got, oh, you know, I haven't saved it as an SVG yet, right? So I skipped a step. So I go back here, and let's say I want to save this as an SVG, but I kind of want to hide stuff, right? Because I say, what is the first step? The first step is I'm going to take this bracket, I'm going to put it on this servo, and I need those 4 screws. So let's go ahead and take these guys, hide them. take these components and hide them. Oh, missed a little screw there. By the way, I'm just hitting H on the keyboard to hide them. Something like that, and the bill of materials is going to update with whatever I have on screen. So here's step 1. Now I'm going to save this as servo step 1. And you can either copy that and paste it here, or you can type it in. I'll usually copy and paste, but I forgot to do that, so I'll just key it in, just like that. Okay. Now, once that's done, I go back to this one. I say for the step 1 button, I'm going to link that to the servo step 1, which is right there. And then I'm going to delete everything but the file name, which is that right there. Okay. Now the very last step, I know I told it at the very beginning, it's there's a lot of little steps here, but this is being recorded, and we will have this online within a week or so, so you guys can follow it step by step. Now I want to save this out as server 1, just overwrite the server 1, and then that will complete the link for everything that we have together right now. Fingers crossed, right? So now I go to the top level gripper, and we go to this guy here. Got our colors now. If I say go back, it should come back here. Go here. I say step 1. It just shows me what is next. And then once I create the step 2, I go to step 2. Step 2 would have these guys, this guy assembled there, this guy's assembled here, the other parts shown. And then step 3 would be those guys going together. So as you can see, it's just one step at a time. It's good to put all those steps together and just create the links at the end so you're not going back and forth, back and forth. But either way works. I just would prefer doing it all at the same time. Okay, so now that we have the basics down, let's show how we integrate Visualize into this. So I have this button here for the composer animation. And you know what? This guy here, we'll talk about this here. This is just the gripper component, the gripper subassembly, that very first one, opened up in SOLIDWORKS, saved as a PDF. By the way, when you do a file, save as PDF, there's a little checkbox there that says create 3D PDF. If that isn't checked, it won't create the 3D file. But once that is, I mean, this is a 3D model, and it's really nice just to have in your assembly instructions. So let's say this is online, and you got this 3D model. So you have your step-by-step assembly instructions, but it's all SVG, it's all 2D. So you can't actually rotate it. You're like, I just want to see the back side of this model. So you can go into SOLIDWORKS, save out a 3D PDF, add that to your assembly instructions, and just like that, people can, zoom in, they can look at different things, they can, it's a little limited because we're not using model-based definitions right now, but we could incorporate model-based definitions and have dimensions and annotations and notes and bill of materials and whole tables and everything like that. So really, but this is just a simplified version, which I really like, it just being simple, cut and dry, 3D model, and you get what you need. Okay. So that we can link to here, and so if I said, and how we do this is say author, let's do an image 2D. What I'll typically do is just place a button, place a 2D image, go into the properties here. This is the map texture path. So hit those 3 little dots, and then we can navigate this to a folder just to pull in an icon. So if you see I have a PDF. It's not quite a 3D PDF icon, but it'll work. Now, once you have an image in here, if you hold down Shift and grab this corner, or any of the 4 corners and move it, it will scale the button to the size of, or to the aspect ratio of that image. So whatever the aspect ratio of the image is, that's what you'll have here. We'll go ahead and update that. Now I just want to link this button to something. And now if I say link, it's the exact same process. Hit the 3 dots. We have our 3D PDF, which is right there. And we just go through and we delete anything that isn't that file name. So right at the 3D PDF, I'll stop. Oh, right there, gripper 360 PDF. Hit enter and update. Now let's save this out. Let's do one more button and then we'll save it all at once, so we don't do this again and again. Okay, so the next button I want to put in is going to be. We'll just repeat that process again. So here's a 2D text panel. We go to the texture map path, hit that. And the next one is going to be this this other button here for a 3D icon. So, because what I want to show here, these are just images off of Google, by the way. These are just they can be anything. You can do this with text, with color blocks, with components, with balloons. Anything you can select, you can create links to, or links with, and link that to something else. But I just want to say here we're going to play the animation. Here's a 3D PDF, and here's the 3D rotatable Visualize photorealistic model, which that's what we'll be pointing to. And of course, we need to link this to something. So let's link this to the final project. This is going to be this open HTML. I'm going to go into Visualize here in just a minute and show how we actually create that. And we'll say OK. And then again, it's this process of deleting all this stuff here. Now, I know everybody's thinking, well, it should be nice if you didn't have to delete all this. There was just a little box that says relative link. I agree with you. We'll make that happen. But as of right now, you gotta do it manually. But we'll get that fixed. Okay, let's find my list. All right, so now if we go here, we update that, and now let's go ahead and save this out as. First, I just want to save the file just in case. It's good to do that from time to time. Now I'm going to take this tech illustration. I'm going to save as top level gripper, which is right there. Save. Yep. I'll just give that a second to let it process. And we're just about done. All right, I think that's it. So here's a top level gripper. And now if we have the build material in the way here. We have the button. We can make it work. Here's the here is the 360 out of Visualize, which is a photorealistic 3D model. And again, this model here, you don't have to have any special device or special plugins or add-ons or anything to view this. This is a 3D rotatable image that you can view on any device, Android, Mac, iOS, PC. Doesn't matter what it is, and probably future ones out there that just have, as long as it's a browser. This is a JavaScript. So what this is a bunch of JPEG images that are knitted together. So basically, if your device can read JavaScript, which anything can, and JPEG images, which anything can, then you can view this 3D model. And you can make it as smooth as you want, how many images you want, and the highest quality imaginable. So it's a really, really cool output, and I'll show you how this is done. It's pretty slick. Okay, and let's back up here. And then that 3D PDF is kind of hiding behind the build materials here. But I don't want to publish this out again. I think I just had the panel for the build materials. I'll just show you if you ever have this happen to you. BOM table, I have it checked. Uncheck that BOM table, resave it out. It won't be there, but we'll skip that step. I don't think it's necessary. But I had my BOM table still checked, and that's why it showed up. Okay, so in that 3D PDF, it would just link you to that one I already showed, the rotatable one from SOLIDWORKS. Okay, so on to the fun stuff here. So this is Visualize. And if you haven't seen Visualize before, it's a drag and drop application for the environment, for the all the different materials and stuff. So right now, this is the gripper with Visualize materials added to it. And then from here, you can save this out as VR content, as static images, as animation. By the way, if you do have any SOLIDWORKS motion animations, those will import directly into Visualize Pro, and you can render them out in photorealism, which is really, really slick. So, if you have these, even with that gravity and everything applied to it with motion, all of that will still animate in Visualize. So, it's a real slick program for just getting real nice photorealistic images just like that. And how it works is, I go to, let's say, appearances. We'll do like metal or maybe some of these paints. It's just a drag and drop. So you start dragging and dropping these colors onto your model. And really, is that easy to go through and start chameleon? That is pretty cool. To start just coloring it and adding your textures to it. And then there is also, of course, the environments. These are all HDRI environments, and these images here will automatically map lighting to your assembly, which is really nice. So you can also do custom lighting. This is Visualize Pro, of course. But if, for instance, if I take, put this in suburbia here, It'll just take a second for it to load that environment. And got this guy outside, and you can see the reflections and anything that's shiny, and it's going to be pulling that lighting off of the environment. So whatever there's the sunlight coming through the trees there, it's going to be casting that onto the materials. Something like that. So really, really slick output, and just easy to manipulate in the software here. You go to Tools, Render, once you're happy with what you're seeing on the screen. Now, if you just say a JPEG image, just a standard render, like I can render this out to the desktop, it would take a few minutes. I will skip this process, but it was that same rendering that I had in the PowerPoint, which I'll show again here. You basically say, I want this size, I want this resolution, do passes, and you can render that or send it to Q or just render it out just like that, and that gives you a static image. Now, if you want that 360 rotatable model, all you have to do is you go to Render Passes. Oh, I'm sorry. Image Output Mode. There it is. And it's Interactive Image. So there is a few options here. There is Render, and then, of course, all cameras, all configs. So if you have configs in cameras, you can batch render those, which is really sweet. The Panoramic and the Interactive Image, these are the quote, VR, unquote, outputs. And so the panoramic is like if you're going to put yourself in the middle of a room, you're going to look around and you see all the things on the walls, and you look at the sink or whatever it is inside that room, you can do that. And then the interactive image is the one that I've already rendered out, that has you basically puts it on a pedestal. You can rotate it around and take a look at it from all the different angles. Now, the interactive image is going to be a lot longer to render out than a static image. Let's say a static image takes 5-10 minutes, depending on if it's like 4K, right? 4K, 10 minutes or so to render out on a decent machine. And then you see here that I have 8 orbits, so it's like 8 latitude. Like if you think this is like a sphere, and you're going to go around it 8 different times, and then how many images per orbit? So that's 36. So that's 36 times 8 for that render, and so that's how many images it's actually creating. And when I go to the images here, you can see the images for the rotation. If I'm just thumbing through the images here, these are just JPEG images, right? But it has to render out each one of these, so that's why it's going to take a little bit longer. This one I did, it took 16 hours to render out. Just gives you a heads up, but so not an incredible amount of time, but it's not 10 minutes to save out that project. But once you have it, man, it adds a lot to your end publication, because you can say, hey, here's the rotatable 3D PDF. Here is the interactive image. Here's all the steps to put this guy together, and everything you need to actually assemble this product. And the best thing about this whole output is it's available on any device. So you don't have to have anything special to view this content, which is something that isn't easy to say in most cases. But in this case, we can totally say it. That, hey, if you develop your publication this way, the step-by-step assembly instruction, you put that out on the internet, or even if you're using it internally, any device on the shop floor, any device your customer has, any device your inspector's using, any device your on-site operator or the guy who's actually repairing the equipment, whatever it is, any device he has, he'll be able to view all this content and get basically 0 questions, because we have so many different angles and measurements and ways that we can output it. So really, really cool output, and I'm really happy with the way that this is coming together. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up here. So just as a recap, SOLIDWORKS is going to be your 3D design software. In most cases, of course, we can, in both Composer and Visualize, we can import basically any CAD and use that. But SOLIDWORKS is the main one, right, that we're going to be doing all the design in. And then with SOLIDWORKS, we can output the 3D PDF. With the additional model-based definitions add-in for that, we could include the PMI data, nodes, tables, things like that. Composer does all the setup. So that's going to be the coloring, the isolation of components, text blocks, renaming of parts, and doing ballooning, build materials, and then laying that out in a step-by-step format. We can link to exterior files. Just remember to take that string and delete the file location and just leave the file itself. Put everything in the same folder, so when it's moved to the internet or wherever you're going to move it, it will all link together. Published video animation. So Composer has a full animation timeline. You can animate in there, publish out that as a video, and then link that to your final deliverable as well. And then this whole project here was the vector SVG final for the final document. And the SVG, that's the backbone behind all this, because it's standard vector graphics, any device can view it, and that's where you're going to be able to create your step-by-step assembly instruction or step-by-step whatever this manual is for, and then view that on any device. Visualize is the cherry on top, right? So that's the for photorealistic images and interactive 3D content for the web. So if you just want to add that bit of spice and say, okay, well, here's what it actually looks like. So more like a marketing image, but even like a 3D marketing image. So really, really powerful there. Okay, so just to wrap this up here, additional webinars. So we do Webinar Wednesday every Wednesday, as most of you probably are aware of. Next Wednesday, we're going to have a work group to PDM, take advantage of better data management. That's going to start at 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time as well. And thanks for attending.